Marilla writes, apparently in reference to Dom's funeral, "I love you so much, Miss Russo. I'm sorry for being on FaceTime made you guys upset. I just needed to see if he looks so peaceful, and thank you guys for putting pictures of me. I'm so sorry, you guys. I wish I could be there to hug you. I love you all so much, and I'm so sorry." I'm so sorry, Miss Russo. I love you all so much. I'm so sorry that this happened. I miss him so much. I wish I could be there for you guys. I will always be here for you, and when I'm out of the hospital, I can take care of you whenever you need. And then she talks about what she wants to put in his coffin. I tried to ask Angelo, but would you be able to go in Dom's room and go into his bedroom and on his back desk and grab some stuff to put in his coffin? I just wanted to be with him. And she seemed to be very aware that she needed to be careful and not cross any lines with this family, because look at this message from August 9th. "Just let me know if you want me to stop bothering you. I will always be here when you're ready to talk." And remember, she's still in the hospital after the crash recovering. For example, this one from September 23rd, "I don't want to bother you and I feel bad for asking. If you guys are doing something for Dom's birthday and you don't want me to come, are you going to go to the grave and maybe we can meet there or something? I'm sorry." And it goes into October. Again, a month before her arrest, she's still reaching out. And a big theme is, why do people hate her? If you don't hate me, I don't understand why they all hate me. And after there's an exchange about Instagram, again, maybe Dom's mother, Mackenzie writes back, "I know I could help you if you want to, but I was just telling you I don't understand why they hate me if you don't hate me. I'm really stressed out about people moving my things or making it look different than it was when Dom lived there," because I think they had been living together. "My top priority is just being able to go inside of that house and just be there for the day. It hurts that everybody but me is allowed in the house. It already hurts seeing all of his friends there at night spending time with you, but it hurts even worse seeing I'm the only one not allowed in his house that I spent the most time in. I just don't get why everybody has to hate me. It just makes me hate myself even more. I wish everybody would just not hate me. I really can't tell if you hate me or not. I feel like if you didn't hate me, you wouldn't let me come over or be there for you, or you would tell everybody that they shouldn't hate me, but I feel like you just don't like me, and I wish you would just tell me so I could stop bugging you." The response back is, "This is all emotional. I can't tell anyone to do anything. I don't hate you. Gosh, I'm having a tough time with just not having my son." The response back from Sharilla is, "You can't tell them to, but you could tell them that you don't hate me, and it's hard for me to. I'm also having a tough time. He was the love of my life, and I spent my last 4 years every day with him pretty much. I just don't understand why I'm the only one not allowed inside of his house. I know he wouldn't want this. I didn't just lose Dom, lost my whole other family, and that's you guys." Now, there were several times during the course of these communications where the conversation circles back to what exactly happened that night, and that Sharilla claims she can't remember. For example, Sharilla was asked, "What made you start speeding?" Sharilla responds, "I don't remember the accident. All I remember is turning on the street and then my vision fading into black. I wish I could remember it. Would make me feel a little bit better." So this is a message from Christine Russo, again, Dominic's mother, to Sharilla. It says, "I would do anything to have you both with me like before, but you need and you have to understand how one feels about this. Your driving killed my son, their brother, and their best friend. No one has any answers about why this accident occurred and why you drove directly into a building which resulted in 2 young men dying. It was not an ordinary car accident. If it was, we would not be having this conversation." Sharilla responds, "I didn't know you felt that way. I hope you would know I would never do this on purpose. I needed him more than anybody on this earth. He was my everything." The response back, "I was explaining to you why it's difficult for things to try to be normal as they never will be. It still never answers what happened that night." Sharilla responds, "I wish I could remember just as much as you want to know why. It kills me not being able to remember, because if I could help, I would. I wasn't asking for life to be normal. It's never going to be the same for me either." And then I got to read you this one where Sharilla responds, "I did not do this on purpose. If I knew any of this would happen, I would have made sure it was me that died. I would think you would understand, but good to know that you think it's all my fault. I do understand that nothing is ever going to be the same. We're in the same boat. We both lost extremely important people to us." Then there's another part that says, "Everybody's life is hell. Everybody's broken over this. It's not just you and Angelo, and I wish I could take that pain away from you guys and just make it so it's only me. I try so hard to tell you guys that I would never do this on purpose, and I thought you would know that." Then there's this one. "Could you please try to help me get people to see that I didn't do this on purpose? Seriously hurts my soul that anyone thinks that, and I can't sleep knowing that." This is from October 14th. And then it also says, "I don't want to lose any more of my family." There's a message to Sharilla that says, no one says that directly. I just said looking from the other side. It's hard to explain anything when you said you don't remember any of it. And then Sharilla responds, I know everybody thinks that though, especially Angelo and I care so much about him, even though he hates me. You guys are my family. I've just been having a rough couple days. I'm trying really hard to talk to everybody. There's this one. Can we please just try to fix this? All I know is it's never going to be the same, but I want to be able to come spend time with you guys. I wish I could bring you guys closer or tell you what happened. If I could remember anything, I would tell you. Now she's asked, what's the last thing you remember? I remember turning onto the street and then my vision fades to black. It really kills me not being able to remember anything. I promise you I would tell you. I've been asking my therapist why I don't remember, and she said it's because of trauma, but I'm going to try to go get hypnotized and make myself remember. And what's interesting also is how much in these conversations she talks about how much she loves Dom. So Sharilla writes at one point, life is just going to be effed up. He was just someone that did something for all of us and made us all feel loved and protected in a special way. He had a really certain soul that was like no other. I've never met anybody that was like him, and he grew so much in our relationship, it just hurts. He was a mama's boy. He would literally be there for you no matter what. And then there's this one. Our relationship was getting so real, like I felt like we were going to get married soon, and it's just so bleeped. Now, speaking of text messages, the text messages between Sharilla and Dominic are included in investigative paperwork. And I just want to take a look. I want to focus on a conversation that happened just 4 weeks before Dom's death. So this looks like he was trying to end things, even writing, there isn't very much time on earth. Quote, Kenzie, you know I love you, but I don't think we should be together at this point. There isn't very much time on earth, you know. I'd like to think we could stop fighting, but it's a breakup fight every week. Neither of us deserve that. I don't want to fight all the time. I know you don't either. Anyone who's around anyone every day of the week is bound to fight. If we can't separate for a little, then we're only going to fight more. I don't want you to think I'm abandoning you. I wish it could work, but I don't think it's going to at this point, especially with the threats. We should just break up so we can both find happiness somewhere else. And that text was followed up by another one just a few hours later, asking Sharilla if she wants to try to work things out. Now there's another document, a police department document that lays out essentially the whole timeline of this investigation. It's up on Law and Crime Plus, the app as well. And a part of that are these text messages between Sharilla and Christine Russo. Now we believe, again, this to be Dom's mother, not his sister, who share the same name. But I'm going to read you these exchanges. So January 30th, 2021, Mackenzie writes, Dom is texting me being really crazy, so please keep an eye on him. I'm worried AF. January 31st, 2021. Mackenzie writes, I didn't mean to make him flip out. I just can't take him yelling at me all night and all day. Russo responds, I know, you should have just hugged him. March 5th, 2022. Russo writes, hey, just go home. Avoid any conflict, please. You can call me. Mackenzie writes, I'm Jay waiting to talk to him. Russo responds, they just left. It's going to be a while. You should respect his space while he's gone. Russo says, I asked you to leave. You should have respect and left. Mackenzie writes, he's home now. July 2nd, 2022. So this is right before the crash, only a few weeks before the crash, right? July 2nd, 2022. Russo writes, don't fight, just leave, take a break. Mackenzie writes, I already left Dom, need some therapy, he's so mean. Hurt me. Mackenzie writes, I'm scared to drive because it's raining, so I just need him to get picked up. If he doesn't get out of my car, I'm calling my dad, so please tell him to get out. Russo responds, Hench is on his way. Calm down for now, please. Mackenzie writes, TBH, to be honest, I can't calm down when he just tried to end my life. Mackenzie writes, then he lied to you about it. Russo writes, I'm just trying to diffuse for now. I'm not mad at anyone. Mackenzie says, I don't think he's capable of that when he keeps telling me to shut up and to duct tape my mouth. Mackenzie says, I don't feel safe. He's also threatening to blackmail me to my mom. He's not getting out. He also blocked me, so I can't go pick up any of my belongings at his house. I hope this is a learning experience for him on what not to do to women because I really don't think he knows how to treat them all. Russo responds, stop the fighting and stop lying. When he gets his things, you can get yours. Mackenzie says, first of all, I'm not lying about anything. Maybe you shouldn't take his words so seriously. You don't know how he treats me behind closed doors. It's never okay to try to end somebody's life or put their hands on people. Russo responds, No one should touch anyone. No fighting for sure in the car. He never put his hands on you. Mackenzie says, you need to tell him that. He tried to end my life today and told me, do you want to die? Mackenzie writes, I almost hit the wall and I could have died. So eerily, very eerie considering what happened only a few weeks later. Russo responds, and you haven't blackmailed him with the cops 100 times? But when police followed up with Hench, the friend who picked up Dom during that early July incident, Dom claimed it was Sherilla who threatened to crash the car. And that was relayed to police in an interview with it saying, quote, I asked Russo about a text message exchange with Mackenzie dated July 17, 2022. At approximately 12:45 hours, Mackenzie asked Russo to pick up Dominic from her car, which was stopped at the side of an unknown highway. Mackenzie claimed Dominic had grabbed her steering wheel in an attempt to spin out the car and hurt her. Russo explained that Mackenzie always blamed Dominic for whatever issues were going on between them. She further added that Dominic called her and calmly asked her to come pick him up because Kenzie is being crazy. She's threatening to crash the car on the highway. Christopher Martin, who goes by Hench, picked up Dominic that day. He was identified by Russo as a friend of Dominic. And several other witnesses talked about Sherilla's driving, including a friend Kelly, who had been with Sherilla, Dom, and Davion at a party before the crash. Quote, when I asked her if she had ever been in the car with Mackenzie as the driver, she said no. Kelly mentioned that her friend Tess had told her that Mackenzie sucked at driving. Kelly believed Tess was someone who knew Mackenzie very well. And then there's this interview with Paul Burlinghouse, the friend who'd hosted the get-together. Quote, next, I inquired whether Paul had ever been a passenger in Mackenzie's car while she drove. He said, I've refused a ride from Mackenzie. When asked why, he said because she was a bad driver. He further explained that she got in fights while driving. He listed an incident between Mackenzie and her neighbor who confronted her about running a stop sign. Paul said he used to see Mackenzie zipping through Pearl Road after school. Paul said he refused rides from Mackenzie because he was not stupid and did not want to put himself in a situation he wouldn't want to be in. Paul mentioned Rosie, who was one of Mackenzie's passengers, told him, don't go in the car with Kenzie, it's not good. And it turns out that Sherilla's Snapchat account was a treasure trove of information. The investigators compiled more than 130 videos or images that were related to Sherilla's driving. I mean, the report states, for example, Mackenzie is driving while simultaneously recording herself on Snapchat. A person in the driver's seat recorded a Snapchat video of the vehicle traveling at 90 miles per hour. Multiple videos exist of Mackenzie recording herself while driving without wearing the seatbelt over her shoulder. In others, the seatbelt is visible under her armpit. Mackenzie records the speedometer of the vehicle she's operating, traveling at 93 miles per hour. So again, when you look at this in the context of what happened to her, what happened to Dominic, what happened to Davion, it's just chilling, to say the least, right? And one of the aspects of the case that is getting a lot of attention is Sherilla's behavior after the crash, appearing to essentially live her life in a way where the argument was it didn't seem like she cared what happened. For example, here's what a police narrative says about trying to speak with Sherilla in the hospital. This is along with her dad, Steve, and her mom, Natalie. Quote, the three of us returned to the room. Mackenzie was conscious and alert. Goes on to say, I explained to all three the details of the search warrant and the basic nature of the investigation. Steve asked about video surveillance from the crash itself. I also informed them that SPD will be downloading the data from the Toyota's event data recorder pursuant to another search warrant. Natalie then inquired about the location of the Toyota. At some point, Mackenzie interrupted and addressed her mom in a language that I did not understand. Her mother replied, you can, indicating that she understood what Mackenzie had said. Mackenzie then turned to me and stated, take my whole license away for 10 years or something like that. Again, the argument would be not appreciating what happened, right? The seriousness of what happened, the crime that she ultimately was convicted of. How about this? Apparently, one of Davion's family members emailed the detective a screenshot of Sherilla's Instagram, which was later shown during Sherilla's sentencing hearing. And it says, quote, this is a screenshot from our daughter Divine's phone of comments, the social media post from Kenzie about her modeling career. This post is from later in the week after the accident while Kenzie was in the hospital. Divine believes that it was approximately 2 days after the accident. The post was commented on by both Kenzie and her mother talking about furthering her modeling career. We are extremely upset to see this post and felt it was very disrespectful to our family's loss and to Davion and Dom. It is sickening that someone could be so self-absorbed after causing the death of two people and destroying any hopes of their future plans. Now, when I read that report, I will tell you some of the most impactful legal aspects of this police report are about the actual car data Was this an accident or was it not, right? So you go to the report, it says, quote, Ohio State Highway Patrol Sergeant Ryan Fox emailed me his analysis of the EDR data. Prior to the Camry entering the intersection, a loud screeching sound can be heard from the business surveillance system camera that records the approach and crash of the Camry. This loud screeching is likely the result of a steering input of the driver and the inability of the tires and friction of the roadway to overcome the forward momentum of the vehicle. The vehicle's tires are likely turned as requested by the steering input reported, but the vehicle is continuing more in its original forward trajectory. This likely indicates manipulation of the steering wheel immediately prior to entering the intersection. The brake light that was illuminated mere fractions of a second prior to impact. The system will activate the rear brake lights to indicate the possible slowing of the vehicle to other motorists, even if the driver is not pressing on the brake pedal. The extreme driver input for the vehicle prior to the collision, the brake light activation, is likely the result of the safety systems working to avoid the impact ahead or return the vehicle to a straight orientation for the direction of travel. This likely indicates that although the steering wheel was manipulated left and right, no braking was applied by the operator. So there you go. Some more things to think about in the Mackenzie Shirilla case as it's back in the conversation. It's back in the dialogue. We're learning more information. We'll stay on top of it here on Sidebar.
When the crash first made headlines, most people focused on the devastating scene itself. Two young men, Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan, had lost their lives after a vehicle slammed into a commercial building at an extremely high speed. Mackenzie Shirilla survived. In the days that followed, news reports centered on the collision, the victims, and the growing investigation. But behind the scenes, detectives were looking far beyond the wreckage. Experienced investigators know that modern criminal cases are rarely solved through physical evidence alone. Today, some of the most revealing clues are found inside smartphones. Text messages, social media activity, call logs, and digital conversations can provide a window into a person's state of mind before a major event. In this case, investigators believed Mackenzie's phone could help them understand what was happening in the weeks and days leading up to the crash. As detectives began reviewing communications connected to the case, they weren't simply looking for a single message that explained everything. Instead, they were searching for patterns. They wanted to understand the relationship between Mackenzie and Dominic, the emotional atmosphere surrounding them, and whether there were warning signs hidden within their digital conversations. The deeper investigators looked, the more questions emerged. Friends had already described a relationship that experienced periods of tension and conflict. Now detectives were attempting to determine whether those accounts matched the digital evidence. Every message, every conversation, and every interaction became another piece of a puzzle that investigators were carefully assembling. What makes this story so fascinating is that text messages often tell two stories at once. On the surface, they may appear ordinary, but when viewed alongside other evidence, those same conversations can take on an entirely different meaning. That possibility kept investigators digging deeper as they worked to understand what had happened. If you enjoy true crime stories that uncover the evidence hidden behind the headlines, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us continue bringing you detailed breakdowns of the cases that continue to spark debate years later. At this stage of the investigation, nobody had reached a final conclusion. Detectives were still gathering facts, reviewing evidence, and building a timeline. But as they continued examining the communications connected to the case, they began to believe that the story of the crash might actually start long before the vehicle ever left the road. And according to prosecutors, some of the most important clues were sitting inside a collection of text messages that would later become a major focus of the case. As investigators continued piecing together the events that led to the fatal crash, their attention increasingly shifted toward the relationship between Mackenzie Shirilla and Dominic Russo. Physical evidence could help explain how the crash happened, but detectives also wanted to understand why. To answer that question, they examined communications, witness statements, and accounts from people who knew the couple personally. According to testimony and evidence later discussed during the case, the relationship had experienced periods of tension before the crash. Like many teenage relationships, it included disagreements, emotional conversations, and moments of uncertainty. But investigators weren't interested in ordinary relationship problems alone. They were looking for context that might help explain the broader story surrounding the tragedy. As they reviewed messages and other communications, detectives attempted to reconstruct the emotional timeline leading up to the crash. Every conversation became part of a larger effort to understand what was happening behind the scenes. What were the major issues in the relationship? Had there been recent conflicts? Were there signs that emotions had escalated in the days before the collision? The answers were not always straightforward. Text messages can reveal a great deal, but they can also be open to interpretation. A message that appears alarming to one person may seem insignificant to another. That's why investigators didn't rely on any single communication. Instead, they examined patterns over time, comparing digital evidence with statements from witnesses and other facts gathered during the investigation. Prosecutors would later argue that the overall picture painted by the evidence revealed a relationship struggling under significant emotional pressure. The defense, meanwhile, maintained that communications alone could not establish what happened during the final moments before the crash. Those competing interpretations would eventually become a major point of contention in court. As you're following this case, let us know in the comments. Do you think investigators can truly understand a relationship by reading text messages after a tragedy? Or do those messages sometimes tell only part of the story? We'd love to hear your thoughts. What investigators discovered during this stage didn't provide all the answers, but according to prosecutors, it helped establish a framework for understanding the events that followed. And as detectives moved closer to reconstructing the final days before the crash, they believed the digital trail might reveal even more about the emotions, conflicts, and decisions that shaped one of the most controversial cases in recent memory. As investigators moved closer to understanding the events surrounding the crash, they focused heavily on the days and hours leading up to that early morning drive. By this point, they had gathered physical evidence, witness statements, and digital communications. The challenge now was determining whether those pieces fit together into a larger story. According to prosecutors, the communications examined during the investigation revealed a relationship under growing emotional strain. Detectives reviewed conversations and interactions in an attempt to establish a timeline of events before the crash. Their goal was not simply to identify what was said, but to understand the emotional context surrounding the people involved. One of the most important questions investigators faced was whether the communications reflected temporary disagreements or something more significant. Relationships often involve arguments and emotional exchanges, especially among teenagers. The prosecution argued that when viewed alongside other evidence, the communications helped explain the circumstances leading up to the tragedy. The defense disagreed, maintaining that messages and conversations could not reliably reveal a person's intentions during the final moments before a crash. This disagreement became one of the most controversial aspects of the case. Supporters of the prosecution believed the digital evidence provided important insight into the relationship dynamics. Others argued that people often send messages when upset, and that those communications can appear far more serious when examined after a tragedy has already occurred. As investigators continued reviewing the evidence, they became increasingly focused on establishing a complete timeline. Every phone call, every message, and every interaction was compared against other facts collected during the investigation. The goal was to determine whether the digital trail aligned with the physical evidence from the crash scene. As you're listening, let us know in the comments. Do you think text messages can reveal a person's true intentions? Or can they sometimes create a misleading picture when viewed without full context? Cases like this often divide opinion, and we'd love to hear your perspective. By now, the investigation had moved far beyond the crash itself. Prosecutors believed they were uncovering a broader story, one that stretched back through weeks of communications and relationship struggles. But the ultimate test would come in court, where both sides would battle over what the evidence truly meant. And when the trial finally began, Every message, every conversation, and every detail would be placed under a microscope as the nation watched. By the time the case reached the courtroom, the crash itself was no longer the only focus. The trial had become a debate about interpretation. What did the evidence actually prove, and what conclusions could reasonably be drawn from it? Prosecutors and defense attorneys presented dramatically different explanations for the same tragedy, and the court would ultimately have to decide which version was more convincing. Prosecutors argued that the physical evidence, vehicle data, and communications collected during the investigation formed a consistent narrative. They pointed to the speed of the vehicle, the circumstances surrounding the collision, and the broader context established during the investigation. According to their argument, the evidence suggested that the crash was not simply a tragic accident. The defense challenged those conclusions. Attorneys argued that the prosecution was interpreting evidence through the lens of hindsight. They maintained that digital communications, emotional conflicts, and relationship problems could not automatically explain what happened in the moments before the crash. The defense urged the court to consider alternative explanations and questioned whether intent could truly be established beyond a reasonable doubt. As expert witnesses testified, jurors and observers heard detailed explanations of crash reconstruction, vehicle data, and investigative findings. Every piece of evidence was examined, challenged, and debated. What might seem straightforward in a news headline became far more complicated inside the courtroom, where legal standards required every claim to be supported by evidence. The case quickly attracted national attention. Social media users, legal analysts, and true crime followers closely watched the proceedings, often reaching very different conclusions about the same facts. Some believed the prosecution had presented a compelling case. Others felt there were still unanswered questions. If you followed the story this far, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Cases like this remind us that courtroom battles are often about far more than a single piece of evidence. They're about how dozens of facts fit together to tell a story. As closing arguments approached, the tension inside the courtroom continued to build. Both sides believed they had made their case. The evidence had been presented. The witnesses had testified. The arguments had been heard. Now only one question remained. How would the court interpret the evidence, and what verdict would ultimately bring this highly controversial case to its conclusion? After days of testimony, expert analysis, and intense legal arguments, the case finally reached its conclusion. The court had reviewed the crash reconstruction evidence, witness statements, digital communications, and every detail investigators had gathered since the tragic collision. Now the judge faced the difficult task of determining what the evidence ultimately proved. When the verdict was announced, it immediately became one of the most talked-about outcomes in recent true crime history. The court found Mackenzie Sherilla guilty in connection with the deaths of Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan. For prosecutors, the decision validated the theory they had presented throughout the trial. For the defense and many supporters, however, the verdict sparked continued debate about whether all questions surrounding the case had truly been answered. The public reaction was swift and divided. Some observers believed the evidence presented during the trial clearly supported the court's decision. Others argued that aspects of the case remained open to interpretation. Online discussions exploded as people analyzed everything from the crash data to the communications examined during the investigation. Years after the tragedy, the case continues to generate strong opinions from people on both sides. But beyond the legal arguments and public controversy lies the reality that often gets lost in high-profile cases. Two young men, Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan, never made it home. Their families were left to cope with a loss that no verdict could ever undo. While the courtroom proceedings eventually came to an end, the impact of that morning continues to be felt by everyone connected to the tragedy. Looking back, one of the most significant aspects of the investigation was the role of digital evidence. Investigators examined messages, communications, and electronic records in an effort to better understand the events leading up to the crash. Whether viewed as crucial evidence or as information open to interpretation, Those communications became a central part of the story and helped shape one of the most controversial cases in recent memory. If this case left you with questions, you're not alone. The debate surrounding the evidence and verdict continues even today. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you agree with the court's conclusion, or do you think important questions remain unanswered? And if you enjoy detailed true crime breakdowns that explore the evidence behind the headlines, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and remember that sometimes the most revealing clues are hidden in places few people think to look.